Hi guys! Okay, so I'm reading a really amazing book. It's called The Power of Imagination by Neville Goddard. I wanted to talk about a book inside the book because there's like 10 books inside this book. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 11 books inside the book. And this specific one is called The Law and the Promise. This was written in 1961 by Neville Goddard. And it goes on to talk about the law. Imagining creates reality. And I wanted to read chapter 1, The Law. Man is all imagination. God is man and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination. That is, God himself. The purpose of the first portion of this book is to show, through actual true stories, how imagining creates reality. Science progresses by way of hypothesis, tentatively tested, and afterwards accepted or rejected, according to the facts of experience. The claim that imagining creates reality needs no more consideration than is allowed by science. It proves itself in performance. And I have a little writing next to this, and I said, I think we do a lot of proving until we learn our power. Then we rest in the knowing, the bliss of our created realities. I am responsible for everything I create, good or bad, dense or light. The world in which we live is a world of imagination. In fact, life itself is an activity of imagining. For Blake, wrote Professor Morrison of the University of St. Andrews, the world originates in a divine activity, identical with what we know ourselves as the activity of imagination. His task being to open the immortal eyes of man inward into the worlds of thought, into eternity, ever expanding in the bosom of God, the human imagination. That's just so beautiful. Amazing. And we've lost touch with our imagination. We got to get back to our imagination. That's where God is. God is in our imagination. Based on a lot of conditioning, we have lost touch with our childlike innocence, where we imagine all of these amazing, beautiful things, and then we look outside into the world and compare it to our imagination. Well, it's not comparable until we can get into our imagination. Nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being only as long as they receive such support. The secret of imagining, writes Douglas Fawcett, is the greatest of all problems, to solutions of which the mystic aspires. Supreme power, supreme wisdom, supreme delight lie in the far-off solutions of this mystery. When man solves the mystery of imagining, he will have discovered the secret of causation, and that is, imagining creates reality. Therefore, the man who is aware of what he is imagining knows what he is creating, realizes more and more that the drama of life is imaginal, not physical. All activity is at bottom imaginal. An awakened imagination works with a purpose. It creates and conserves the desirable and transforms or destroys the undesirable. Divine imagining and human imagining are not two powers at all, rather one. The valid distinction which exists between the seeming two lies, not in the substance with which they operate, but in the degree of intensity of the operant power itself. Acting at high tension, an imaginal act is an immediate objective fact. Keyed low, an imaginal act is realized in a time process. But whether imagination is keyed high or low, it is the ultimate essential essentially non-objective reality, from which objects are poured forth like sudden fancies. No object is independent of imagining on some level or levels. Everything in the world owes its character to imagination on one of its various levels. Objective reality is solely produced through imagination. Objects seem so independent of our perception of them that we incline to forget that we owe their origin to imagination. The world in which we live is a world of imagination, and man, through his imaginal activities, creates the realities and the circumstances of his life. This he does either knowingly or unknowingly. So what are we creating? Look around. Look around at your family, look around at your finances, look around at yourself. What are you creating? Men pay too little attention to this priceless gift, the human imagination, and a gift is practically non-existent unless there is a conscious possession of it and a readiness to use it. So this takes willingness. Are you ready to use your imagination? All men possess the power to create reality, but this power sleeps as though dead when not consciously exercised. Men live in the very heart of creation, the human imagination. So this is saying that the human imagination is in your heart. Yet are no wiser for what takes place therein. The future will not be fundamentally different from the imaginal activities of man. Therefore, the individual who can summon at will whatever imaginal activity he pleases, and to whom the visions of his imagination are as real as the forms of nature, is master of his fate. We need to practically apply these principles and this law of imagining. So how are we going to do that? We have to get back into our heart feeling center. And this is where we discover our imagination again. The future is the imaginal activity of man in its creative march. Imagining is the creative power not only of the poet, the artist, the actor, but of the scientist, the inventor, the merchant, and the artisan. Its abuse in unrestrained, unlovely image-making is obvious, but its abuse in undue repression breeds a sterility which robs man of actual wealth of experience. Imagining novel solutions to ever more complex problems is far more noble than to run from problems. Life is the continual solution of a continuously synthetic problem. Imagining creates events. The world created out of men's imagining comprises unnumbered warring beliefs. Therefore, there can never be a perfectly stable or static state. Today's events are bound to disturb yesterday's established order. Imaginative men and women invariably unsettle a pre-existing peace of mind. Do not bow before the dictate of facts and accept life on the basis of the world without. Assert the supremacy of your imaginal acts over facts and put all things in subjection to them. All things. Hold fast to your idea in your imagination. Nothing can take it from you but your failure to persist in imagining the ideal realized. Imagine only such states that are of value or promise well. To attempt to change circumstances before you change your imaginal activity is to struggle against the very nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an imaginal change. Everything you do, unaccompanied by an imaginal change, is but futile readjustment of surfaces. Imagining the wish fulfilled brings about a union within that state, and during that union you behave in keeping with your imaginal change. This shows that an imaginal change will result in a change of behavior. However, your ordinary imaginal alterations as you pass from one state to another are not transformations, because each of them is so rapidly succeeded by another in the reverse direction. But whether one state grows so stable as to become your constant mood, your habitual attitude, then that habitual state defines your character and is a true transformation. So we have to be the very thing that we want. How do you do it? Self-abandonment. That is the secret. You must abandon yourself mentally to your wish fulfilled in your love for that state, and in doing so, live in the new state and no more in the old state. You can't commit yourself to what you do not love. So the secret of self-commission is faith plus love. Faith is believing in what is unbelievable. Commit yourself to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, in faith that this act of self-commission will become a reality. And it must become a reality because imagining creates reality. Imagination is both conservative and transformative.